The hologram appeared above Earth at 4:17 a.m., and by the time anyone understood what they were looking at, 12 people had already walked into it and never come back. I was in mission control when the first citizen materialized in the projection, a woman in clothes I didn't recognize, standing in a street that looked like downtown Seattle but wasn't, not quite. The building stretched too high and the sky had that copper tint you see in dreams you can't quite remember. She was staring directly at us through the screen, through the satellites, through the void itself, and she said my name. Not my call sign. My actual name. The one I hadn't used since I was 17. Then she told me the exact date I would die, and the room went silent because half the people there had already started checking their phones, pulling up records, trying to prove her wrong, but the timestamp she gave matched the day my father had died, same month, same year ahead, just offset by 1 generation. The spacecraft wasn't broadcasting. It was showing. There's a difference. Broadcasting suggests intention, a message meant to travel. This was just there, like it had always been there, like we were only now gaining the ability to see it. The craft itself was small, barely the size of a commercial airliner, black and smooth and wrong in a way that made your eyes hurt if you looked too long, some kind of gravitational lensing that bent the stars around it into shape stars shouldn't make. But the city it projected was enormous, sprawling across the orbital plane in every direction, a perfect three-dimensional model suspended in nothing, and it was populated. Thousands of people. Maybe millions. All of them us. I don't mean people like us. I mean us specifically. The second citizen to appear was Director Vance, except he was older, maybe 70, and he was missing his left arm. He stood in what looked like a war bunker, concrete walls, flickering lights, and he recited a string of coordinates that didn't correspond to anywhere on Earth. Then he said the words, "It wasn't supposed to be Saturn," and vanished. The real Vance was standing 6 feet away from me, 53 years old, both arms intact, and the look on his face told me he understood something the rest of us didn't yet. By hour 2, we'd identified 47 citizens in the projection. All personnel from our facility. All older, or younger, or scarred, or changed in ways that felt like time had been folded wrong. Some of them were delivering technical data, equations we'd never solved, things we hadn't even theorized yet. Others were just standing there, silent, staring out at us like they were waiting for us to catch up. One of them was me. She was probably 60, hair gone white, and she was standing in a room I'd never seen before, surrounded by screens that showed Earth from orbit, except Earth was darker, the lights fewer, whole coastlines swallowed by something I couldn't identify. She didn't speak. She just held up her hand, palm out, and on her wrist was a scar in the exact shape of the burn I'd gotten 3 weeks ago when a coolant line ruptured. Same place. Same angle. But hers was old, decades healed, like she'd been living with it her entire life forward. The problem wasn't that the projection showed us. The problem was that every version was slightly different, and the differences added up to something that looked like a map. Vance figured it out first. He started plotting the data points, matching each citizen's statement or appearance to a timeline, and what emerged wasn't one future, it was hundreds, all diverging from a single point roughly 18 months ahead. Something was going to happen. A decision, an event, an arrival. We didn't know. But in some timelines we survived it, and in others we didn't, and in a few, we became something else entirely, something the projection kept showing us in fragments, people with modifications, people who looked at Earth like it was a memory instead of a home. The spacecraft wasn't communicating. It was offering. Every citizen was a clue, a piece of a puzzle we hadn't agreed to solve, and the more we watched, the more it became clear that the puzzle was us, our choices, the 1,000 small decisions that would lead to one version of the future instead of another. The problem was that some of the futures were better, objectively, measurably better, longer lifespans, cleaner energy, signs of technologies we couldn't even begin to reverse engineer, and some were worse, much worse, the kind of worse where you see your own face staring back at you from a bombed-out building, or standing trial for something you can't imagine doing but know, somehow, that you will. I started seeing my older self more frequently. She appeared in different locations, different contexts, sometimes alone, sometimes with people I didn't recognize. In one she was wearing a uniform I'd never seen, dark blue with a silver emblem that looked almost military but wasn't any branch I knew. In another she was barefoot, sitting on the floor of what looked like a residential module, crying, just crying, no context, no explanation. And in one, the one that made me stop sleeping, she was standing in the same mission control room I was in now, looking directly at where I was standing, and she mouthed the words, "Don't trust the choice they give you." I reported it. Protocol demanded it. But Vance told me to keep watching, keep logging, because my future selves were some of the most consistent, appearing more often than almost anyone else's, and that meant something, he said, that meant I was central to whatever divergence point we were approaching. I didn't want to be central. I wanted the spacecraft to leave, the projection to disappear, the city to collapse back into whatever impossible space it had come from. But it didn't. It grew. By day 5, the holographic city had expanded to include structures we didn't recognize, architectures that didn't follow human logic, and citizens who weren't from our facility, weren't from Earth, people with features that suggested generations of adaptation to environments we'd never seen, speaking languages that our systems couldn't parse but that felt almost familiar, like hearing your own voice played backward. The governments got involved. Obviously. But they couldn't do anything. Every weapon we fired at the spacecraft passed through it like it wasn't there, and maybe it wasn't, maybe it existed in some adjacent dimension, some frequency we couldn't interact with except visually. The projection, though, that was different. People started trying to enter it. Volunteers, researchers, desperate believers who thought the city held answers or salvation or a way forward. 12 had gone in that first day. By the end of the week, it was over 100. None of them came back. Or rather, they did come back, but not to us, not to this timeline. We'd see them sometimes, appearing as citizens in the projection, older or younger, changed, delivering their own clues about futures we'd never reach. One of the volunteers was my colleague, Hernandez, and 2 days after he walked into the light, I saw him standing in a version of the city that looked like it was underwater, gills visible on his neck, and he said, "It's not a choice, it's a filter," and then he was gone. I didn't understand. None of us did. But the phrase kept repeating, showing up in the data logs, whispered by other citizens, written on walls in the projection's architecture. It's not a choice, it's a filter. Then my older self appeared again, and this time she spoke for longer. She was standing in a facility I didn't recognize, surrounded by people who looked like scientists but moved like soldiers, and she said, "The ship isn't showing you the future. It's sorting you into it. Every person who looks, every person who engages, their timeline collapses into one of the versions. The more you watch, the more you decide, the less freedom you have. The city is a trap. It's beautiful and it's true and it's a trap. By the time you understand that, you'll already be in it, you'll already be one of us, living out the probability they chose for you. There's no escape. There's only the moment before you looked, and we're all past that now." She stared directly at the screen, directly at me, and I saw something in her eyes that wasn't regret, wasn't fear, it was recognition, the kind you have when you meet someone you've known your entire life. Then she said, "You'll make the same choice I did. You'll think it's different, but it isn't. And when you do, remember that I tried to warn you." The transmission cut. The city flickered. And I realized, standing there in mission control with everyone staring at the screens, that I'd already started to change. I could feel it, subtle, like my thoughts were being nudged in directions they wouldn't normally go, like decisions I hadn't made yet were already casting shadows backward. Vance ordered a full lockdown, no one looks at the projection, no one engages, but it was too late, we'd all been watching for days, weeks, and the sorting had already begun, timelines collapsing, probabilities narrowing, the future contracting around us like a fist. I started noticing discrepancies. Small things. A colleague mentioning an event I didn't remember. A report on my desk I knew I hadn't written. The date on my phone showing a day I'd already lived. Time wasn't breaking, it was being rewritten, selectively, carefully, and the ship was the mechanism, the city was the interface, and we were the variables being optimized. I tried to stop looking, tried to focus on anything else, but the projection was everywhere now, broadcast on every screen, every feed, people around the world watching their own futures, their own alternate selves, making choices based on clues they didn't understand, and with every choice, the timeline solidified, locked in, irreversible. I saw myself one last time. She was standing in the dark, no city, no structure, just void, and she looked tired, older than she should have been, and she said, "It's already over." The moment the ship arrived, the moment we looked, we stopped being the people who could choose. We became echoes of the choices it wanted us to make. Every future you see, every version of yourself, they're all real, but they're not yours. They're the ones that serve the pattern, the ones that fit the filter. I don't know what it wants. I don't think it wants anything. I think it just is, and we're what happens when something like that looks at something like us. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Then she faded, and the city collapsed, not violently, just gone, like it had never been, and the spacecraft dissolved into the stars, and everyone on Earth exhaled, thinking it was over, thinking we'd survived. But I knew better. I could feel the changes settling in, the timeline I was in now different from the one I'd been in before, the scar on my wrist older than it should be, memories in my head that didn't quite fit, and when I looked around the room, I saw the same realization in everyone else's eyes. We hadn't survived. We'd been sorted. And somewhere, in another version of this moment, another version of me was realizing the same thing, and another, infinite variations of the same trap, all of us echoes of a choice we never got to make. The ship didn't come to warn us. It came to decide us. And now, every future we walk into, we walk because it watched us, and we watched back, and that was all it needed. I still see the city sometimes, when I close my eyes, when I dream, and I see her, the version of me that tried to warn us, and I wonder if she sees me too, if all of us see each other across the collapsed timelines, knowing we're all living in the probability something else chose. There's no fighting it. There's no going back. There's only the future we were sorted into, and the quiet, growing certainty that we were never really meant to choose at all.